Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. This week, Paul Downs, Sarah Segal, and Laura Zander discuss their daily routines, how those routines have been affected by the pandemic, whether they think they're working too much or too little, and whether they would join a peer group where they would be exposed to other owners who might be working harder and having greater success. Plus, Laura places her bet on influencer marketing. Paul says his new marketing campaign has already paid off, and Sarah explains why not one of her employees has ever asked for a raise. Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations will let owners know they are not alone in facing challenges. Same thing with our daily newsletter, the 21 Hats Morning Report, which Inc. magazine recently named the best newsletter for business owners and which you can subscribe to at 21hats.com. where you can also find transcripts of our podcast episodes and lots of other articles and interviews. Joining me this week on the podcast are regulars Paul Downs, who is CEO of Paul Downs Cabinet Makers, which is based outside of Philadelphia and makes custom conference tables. Sarah Segal, founder and CEO of Segal Communications, a public relations firm based in San Francisco. And Laura Zander, who is CEO of Jimmy Bean's Wool, a digital yarn store based in Reno, Nevada, and Madelintosh, a yarn supplier based in Fort Worth, Texas. The episode is titled, Are There Enough Hours in Your Day? Welcome, Paul, Sarah, and Laura. It's great to have you all here. I want to talk today a little about how you manage your time, starting with whether you have a basic daily routine. Let me start with you, Paul. You have a very methodical approach to how you manage your business, and I wouldn't be surprised if you take a similar approach to managing your day. Do you?
Maybe. I am sort of a routine kind of person, so my day starts pretty early because I like to have a very extended morning before I do anything much. So I get up 5:30 or 6, read the paper, blah, blah, blah. I don't scurry off to work because I'm in kind of a sweet spot right now where the company is big enough that there's a lot going on. It's interesting to be here, but it's not so big that I'm overwhelmed. And I've been able to offload pretty much all the minute-by-minute operational responsibilities to my employees. So I just have to keep an eye on things. I have in other years been extremely busy, overloaded, house full of little kids and all that. And I think I've now entered the happy golden years where I just don't have to do a lot of that, and I'm enjoying not being super busy. So my morning routine is just come in, check my emails, walk around the shop, see what's going on. We have a number of scheduled weekly meetings, but they take up maybe 6 hours of my week. And I spend a lot of time slowly working on projects or just waiting for someone to come in my office and drop some problem in my lap. That's just me. I'm not super busy at the moment.
So I'm totally jealous and kind of hate you at this moment.
Don't hate me. I don't make as much money as I could because I'm lazy like that. I mean, there's a cost. So,
Well, wait a second. What you just described isn't necessarily laziness. I suspect it's not laziness at all.
Delegation.
And it's probably the recipe for making more money, not less. Don't you think, Paul?
It's easier money.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm with Paul.
You know, like I make something on the order of $150 an hour, and half my day is just reading the New York Times and Reddit. So,
wow.
Yay. I'm happy with it. I think that my business, it struggles, it sort of bounces back and forth between wanting to be a lifestyle business and wanting to be something else.
You know, let me stop you there because I kind of hate that term lifestyle business. It kind of suggests that you're not really serious and you're just sort of doing it on the side. What do you mean by a lifestyle business, Paul?
Well, one where my business life is integrated into a lifestyle that I find genial. And when things start to get out of control in business, I change it. And that means sometimes choosing not to do things that someone who is in a different stage of life or had different ambitions for how they wanted to dispose of their business or, how many years they plan to be in it, they would probably take a different approach than I do. But I've been basically doing the same job since I was 22 years old, and anticipate doing it another 5 or 10 years. And there's no pressing need for me to change things today if I don't see the need to do it. So that's my lifestyle.
But it's not like you're trying to spend half your time traveling or...
No, I don't like to travel. But one thing I do that affects my hours at work is I take time to exercise pretty much every day. Sometimes I ride my bike to work. Sometimes I go to the gym, but I always make time for that. And then the other thing is I get home early. Like, I don't like to be here after 5 or 5:15. I'm done with my day, so I go home.
Are there people still working when you leave?
Some of them, because we have flex time. Usually there's one engineer here who comes in about 10:30 after he gets his kids off and stays till 6:30 or 7. And sometimes there's people out on the production floor working on something later. But as a general rule, I'm one of the last ones in, and I'm also one of the last ones to leave, but it's not that late. Like, I never work after dinner. I just refuse to do it.
And you feel, obviously, like this is working for you.
I could throw a resume down there, and you guys could evaluate whether I've been successful or not.
Well, that's not what I asked. I mean, I hear what you're saying.
Let me qualify that. I'm in a Vistage group, and I'm the least successful guy in it. And every time I leave a meeting, I'm like, shoot, I should be doing more. And then I go to other contexts and meet people who've tried to do same industry that I'm in and didn't achieve anywhere near what I achieved. And then I've experienced strokes of good fortune in my life that allowed me to be successful at some other endeavors, like being a writer. And I have a lovely wife and nice kids. And so, yeah, I'm pretty successful.
But when you leave Vistage meetings thinking you should be doing more, are you thinking that you should be trying different things, different strategies, different approaches, or are you thinking you're not working hard enough and not putting in enough hours?
Probably the latter. I mean, I just see people working so much more than I do. And not that there were many years when I did all that. And I just can't do it anymore. I'm just not interested.
That's what I would ask, Paul. Like, all of those guys that you're talking to and seeing, how long have they been doing it? I mean, you and Jay and I mean, this is 20, 30 years. Like, we've put our time in. We've done the 80-hour weeks. We've done everything that we needed to do and worked our tails off so that we could, coast for a little while.
Yeah. That's exactly how I feel. And those people in my group, no, they're different. They're younger, they're smarter, they're hungrier, they're this, they're that, the other thing. They're just not me. And they haven't experienced the arc of my life. I mean, I've had some personal issues that were definitely affected my ability to work long hours. I have an autistic son, and raising him was no joke. So everybody goes down the path they go down. I'm not apologizing for it, but being in that group does certainly open my eyes to different ways of running a business and different ways of thinking about how it integrates into your life.
It's funny. I got a phone call yesterday and an email just kind of out of the blue from a Vistage chair who's trying to put together a group here in Reno. And I tried EO probably about 7 years ago for a year. I've been thinking about doing Vistage, and I know you do and Jay does, but part of the reason I don't want to do it is because I don't know that I want to be surrounded by people and like constantly walk out of these meetings and feel like I'm doing a crap job, or feel like, oh, I should be doing what they're doing, or, oh, if only I were, working harder, or if only I were more successful. And like, do I really want that right now? Do I really want to look around and, pay to compare myself to other people all the time?
Well, I say yes. I mean, yes, I find it very valuable. And that there's a couple of aspects of Vistage for me. One, the peers. Like, I just have guys that I've known now for 10 years, and they're a tremendously useful resource. So you're wondering, like, okay, who's got a lawyer who can do this particular thing? You can ask around. And also, it gives you insight into what problems are particular to whatever industry you're in, as opposed to problems that everybody has. And then the other thing is we get a lot of outside speakers who come in and give you sort of the management theory of the minute. And some of those are good and some of them are horrible. And so again, makes me think about, okay, well, I want to do this. Is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? Other people are treating their employees this way or that way. They make money off it. Is that something I personally stomach or not? So having that group has given me a ton of perspective and made it easier for me to sit in my office and read the paper because I'm now aware of what I'm missing, what I'm giving up, what I gain from it. And it's just that outside perspective that's very, very hard to, well, I never had access to it until I joined Vistage. Maybe it's just easier these days. But the first 20 years of my business, like there was no internet, there was nothing. I had nobody. I had no idea what I was doing. So I like having that outside perspective.
I want to ask Sarah in a second why she hates Paul. But before I do, Paul, one quick question for you. You told us earlier this year that you're hoping to double your revenues over the next couple of years to improve the chances that you would be able to sell the business should you choose to do that. Do you think setting down that path, making the decision to try to double your revenues will require you to change your daily routine and adjust some of the thinking that you just explained?
Yes, but I'm going into it eyes wide open. And the thinking about the different options of how to do this and taking into account what I want personally for my life. Like, for instance, I'm exploring moving out of our facility, which we've been in for 20 years now, into a place that would be bigger and more adjacent to sort of the center of where my employees are. On Tuesday, when I looked at a building, and it was like many industrial properties when you're looking at them. It was in terrible shape. But just imagining, okay, now I got to get in the car and drive to this place, and now I got to sit in this particular office as opposed to one that has windows. And do I really want to do that? And it was part of my thinking, like, hell no, this place is horrible, and I don't really want to be there. So that's off the list. And so, yeah, I'm thinking about bigger goals, and now it makes me think, okay, how could we accomplish those revenue goals without moving? Any boss who makes a decision and somehow doesn't factor in how it's going to change your personal life, like I can't imagine making decisions that way.
All right, Sarah, why don't you tell us a little bit about your daily routine?
Well, I aspire to be like Paul. I'm just not there yet. And I think PR is just the way that the business works. It's really hard to kind of take yourself out until you're a much larger company. So, yeah, I have a lot of goals in terms of growth. So then I can eventually step back and be in more of Paul's role and be the person that's the resource to solve problems or looking at bigger decisions to be made for a company. My daily routine, just to preface this, I have 2 teenagers. So life is spent sometimes throwing in a ride here and there until they get their driver's licenses.
And then everything gets really easy.
Oh, I know. I have discovered that if I get up at the crack of dawn in the morning and spend that time reviewing documents, my brain is sharp. I'm drinking my coffee. I usually have my laptop in bed, and I'm literally just reviewing any client-facing documents that really need my visibility. So that's kind of where I spend that time. One of my staffers who runs our social media department pinged me yesterday and was like, "Do you need to look at our quarterly social media reports for clients?" And I'm like, "Only if you want me to." Because I trust her and I trust her ability to have somebody else on the team double check it. So I'm trying to take myself out of kind of that micromanagement. I was like, if you want me to micromanage, by all means, but there's a level of trust I have on my staffers. So, and then I really dive in. I think I mentioned this probably on another podcast, but we've set up our schedule with our meetings with our clients where we only meet with our clients every other week, not weekly. A lot of PR agencies do weekly calls. We've discovered that people are kind of over Zoom and exhausted by calls. We also like to have that week where we can just be heads down working on content for our clients. So right now we're in the middle of meetings week, and it's exhausting. I mean, it is like by the end of the week, you are ready for a very large glass of wine. But everybody loves it. And I've definitely asked everybody if on the team, if they still want to continue to do it. And hands down, 100%, everybody likes to be able to have, all right, next week is just going to be a focused creating content and driving results week, and not being distracted by preparing and recapping meetings. I am more involved, just high-level reviews. I'm also really busy with new business. I spend a lot of time pulling together proposals and presentations because we're starting to do not just PR, but creative campaigns. I'm happily married to a creative director, and we get a lot of startups that say, we really want to do PR, but you look at their content, you look at their website, and you look at their creative campaigns, and you're like, yeah, you're not ready. Maybe you should talk to Ben before that. And so we ended up doing kind of a creative campaign / PR program. So a lot of time on that lately. But I have to say that I put a lot of pressure on myself to kind of grow in the company, increase profits, all of that. But I am very black and white about making sure my employees have a good work-life balance, because I worry about burnout, because you can just keep going with this stuff. Like I could literally work on the work that I have 24 hours a day, because there's always something else that we can add to the fold. But the last thing I will add to this is that I have discovered that because I have that need to kind of work all the time and drive the company forward, I signed up, and I have been doing this for a while, to coach an athletic team. At the end of the day, I go over onto a field with a bunch of high school kids, and I coach an athletic team Monday through Friday.
What kind of team?
I coach cheerleading. And I have been for years. And it stops me thinking about work, and it boosts my endorphins, and it brings me back fresh. So sometimes I'll come home, I'll eat dinner, pull out the laptop again, throw out a couple more pieces of work, and feel good about the end of the day. But like my day-to-day is kind of frantic right now.
Do you feel like you're doing something wrong?
Well, we're in a weird situation where we have an imbalance between our tech team and our consumer team. We need more people on our consumer side. We have like 15 proposals out there for pending work. It's a hurry up and wait situation where it was like, oh, we're really interested. We need to do PR. Fall is really important because people are shopping, and that's where we go into the black. And then it's nothing. So there is a concern that all of a sudden we're going to be hit with all of these people wanting to sign on the dotted line. And so we're trying to find potential people to join the team. It's just a really complicated time right now.
Got it. How about you, Laura? What's your routine like?
So I don't have a routine just because of my travel. Every week, every month is different. Like in August, I'll be home for 3 weeks in a row. And so by like week 3, I'll start to develop a routine, but then I'm on the road again. And I'm in a different place than I normally am.
Are you still spending a couple of weeks in Texas every month?
No, I was in Texas in June, the first week of June, and I'll be there the first week of August. So now it's kind of every other month, but then it's just random. We had a trade show. We've been taking a couple of vacations. We were in Costa Rica last week. Friday, we're going to go to Idaho for vacation. Then we come back for a week. Then I go to Texas for a week, and then I'm back for a week, and blah, blah, blah. So is not having a routine working for me? I don't know any other way. I mean, I've never really had a routine. I've moved my whole life. I've never lived in a house, except for the last house, longer than 2 years in my entire life. So I don't know what it's like to have kind of that stability. So it is what it is.
Do you struggle with finding enough hours in the day, or are you at a point where you feel comfortable with the amount of time you're putting in?
Now I'm kind of with Paul, now that this whole acquisition thing has passed.
Without you making the acquisition, right?
Yes, exactly. So that was definitely like a bubble of crazy energy and crazy time. But since that passed, and I think that was May and June, No, now I've got plenty of time. I'm running again. I've got a kid in middle school, so, spending time with him. I talked to Jay and I'm like, Jay, sometimes I wonder, like, what's my job? And he's like, your job is to be a mom. Your job is to spend time with your kid while you can, because we've gotten the business to the point where the business can kind of take care of itself. So right now, my semi-routine is when I'm home for a week, we're all in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I go to the office at about, after I drop Huck off, around 9 or 10-ish, and then I'm there till about 2:30, and then I go pick Huck back up, and then, I'll work maybe an hour or two at home. I get up at 5:30 or so, 5:30 or 6, and I usually check email and do probably stuff for an hour or two before I'll go for a run or something. But it really depends. It also depends on the weather, so like right now it's starting to get hot. So my routine has changed in that I need to get outside, at 6 or 7 in the morning versus in the shoulder seasons.
Is it hard for you to leave the office when other people are still there working? Are you conscious of that?
No, not anymore. Like, I'm past that. We have such a good team and they're taking care of everything. I'm kind of, like Paul said, kind of in these golden years, and I'm really enjoying it. So I feel like as long as we can continue to grow the business slightly, but more importantly, if I can keep growing the people, then they will continue to grow the business. And that's really what we're looking for. And sometimes I feel like I don't have enough to do. But I'm enjoying that and I'm appreciating it because I know that that's not forever. Something could change. One of my key people could leave. One of my key people left a couple of months ago. And so for about a month, I had to go heads down to pick up her work and figure out how to redistribute it and really figure out what she was doing and what she was working on. But we adapted pretty quickly. It wasn't as long of a slog as it has been in the past. So I think we're just getting better at it. After 20 years.
Do you ever struggle to turn it off at the end of the day?
Not now. But we don't have anything like any huge, big acquisitions or any big, huge things. So I've had to it took me a while to transition into this lifestyle, if you will, that I've got right now. But again, really following Paul's lead and Jay's lead, I'm setting goals for myself to read a chapter of a business book every day, and to focus on really trying to learn and observe and read more, and think more.
Have any of you changed your routines because of the pandemic? And are you happy with the change?
I have to be a little bit more rigorous about finding a place to stop, so that I don't burn my own self out. Because before the pandemic, you'd be going into an office and you leave the office, so you'd leave your work behind. When you're at home, your work is still there in front of you. That said, my team is actually going to be going back to the office starting in August. Just one day a week, just to kind of get people back in, seeing each other, breathing on each other. But yeah, it's really hard to leave it behind. So I definitely had to make changes in terms of leaving my office and closing the door and just having some time with my family.
When the pandemic came along, it was a great excuse to not jump in a car and go see people for things that really didn't deserve it. I've altered my medium distance travel quite a bit and taken a lot more Zoom meetings as opposed to going to see people. And a lot of times those meetings really weren't worth an hour or two in a car. And so I'm very glad that we haven't resumed that as an ordinary practice. Now, my shop never really shut down other than for a couple of weeks. So I've always gotten up and gone to work and people were at work. You can't run a factory from home. So a lot of the pleasures of seeing the work being done and interacting with the people I've never really had to give up. But I really do not miss driving. I probably cut 10,000 miles a year out of my driving, easy. And that's been great because I don't like to drive.
Wow.
Yeah, we used to do our pitch proposal presentations in person. We'd go and we do our dog and pony show. We'd all travel there. It would be a day out of our work life to go do those proposals. And we have not done one in-person proposal since the pandemic started.
Has it affected your batting average?
I don't think so, because I think everybody kind of acclimated to it. I mean, I do think that there's a benefit of doing in person because half of what we do in terms of getting selected or finding work, it's about whether or not we gel with the client. If you have a good personal dynamic with them, you're going to get the job. When it's just a video call, it's really a transactional experience. So you're not necessarily getting to that next level. And I think it makes it harder for the client also to choose what agency to go with because they're not seeing these people in person. They're not like getting to that kind of colleague zone with them, for lack of a better way to describe it.
Are you hoping to return to doing your pitches in person?
That's a good question. This has become such the norm now that we would if somebody wanted us to, for sure. My team loves getting on a plane and traveling. But it hasn't been requested, but that's a good idea. I mean, we're saying, hey, we'll pop on a plane and come do this in person if you're open to it. Just because I do think that, Lauren, that it would help our batting average because people are ready to meet in person and that might be a good way to boost our win rate.
All right. Next topic. In the podcast we just published, I asked everybody, Sarah was there, to tell us what you would do if I gave you $10,000 a month to spend on marketing. We've talked to Paul a good bit about his new marketing scheme, but I did want to ask Laura. Laura, I imagine you're spending quite a bit more than $10,000 a month on marketing, but if I could give you $10,000 in addition right now to play with, what would you do with it?
It's a great question. And I was thinking about it and I was actually dreaming. I'm like, I wonder if he's got somebody who is really going to give this money to us, like whoever has the best answer.
Laura, you never know who's going to listen to the podcast. So that's not out of the question.
Exactly. So whoever's listening, please choose me. I was thinking about it. So we spend a lot of money, like you mentioned, mostly on Google AdWords, Facebook, Instagram, and various other things. We actually spend a fair amount of money as well on, and this is sure very specific to us, but creating samples, right? So we're creating samples of the products that we sell, creating samples of the products that we produce. And we spend a little bit of money on influencers. And so I think that that's where I would really double down. And I was really thinking about it and, just the way the world is right now, post-pandemic, I'm really focused on spending money on people. And like real people, not people with an LLC at the end of their names. So I would double down and come up with some better programs to support up-and-coming designers who would design things using our yarns, using our products, on bloggers, on influencers, basically on men and women who are independently run businesses, micro businesses, micro influencers, to help them create a business out of what they do. And that's really, really where all of our businesses are headed is, in our mission statement, for instance, for the Texas business, we're here to help strengthen this industry. And we believe that we strengthen the industry through helping creatives have successful small businesses and be able to make a living through their art. And so that's where I would put it. I'd grassroots it. I'd put it right back into the industry and right back into the people.
Have you had much success with influencers thus far?
Yeah, absolutely. No pun intended, or maybe I do intend it, but we're a close-knit business, right? It's a close-knit industry, and people really are the lifeblood. It's funny you asked this question because we did just double down. We just hired somebody who was an influencer as a part-time contractor to help us really participate more in the community. So, how do we help sponsor micro events that are out there, events with 20 people, 30 people, 40 people. So how do we get our name out there and rebuild our brand and make sure that everybody in the country knows who we are and that they know that we're a real supporter of the community is kind of our goal. I don't know what the ROI is going to look like on that, and that there's going to be like really super measurable ROI. So it's a bit of a PR play.
Can I ask you how have you worked with influencers in the past? Like, are they all paid relationships? How do you find them? What is your process been with that?
It varies. It's a small industry. So in terms of how we find them, I don't know that it's like intuitively obvious. I mean, you just know. I don't know how to describe it. It's just the popular kids, right?
Is it so? It's just kind of people that you become aware of,
Sure.
As opposed to instituting a search where you
Totally,
go looking through social media channels to try to find the right people.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small community, so it's just not that difficult.
What do you ask them to do once you've connected with them?
It depends. It depends on, are they a nano influencer? Are they micro? Are they macro? Are they influencers because they're designers? Are they influencers because they're just personalities? Are they up and coming? So some people we work with and we ask them to design things for us and, maybe post about it. Some people are more personalities, and so we will collaborate with them and partner with them and maybe give them a percentage of sales based on products that we've co-branded.
Have you thought about how you will try to determine the return?
No. You mean for the $10,000 that we're not actually going to get?
Or in general, the money that you spend?
Our social media manager, she just allocates a certain percentage. I mean, for the affiliate sharing, it's really easy. You can obviously see that. It's tracked. For the stuff that's a little softer, a little more on the PR side, the community building, it's a very intuitive approach. I don't even know if stuff like clout exists anymore.
No.
But I'm sure, okay, yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's something out there where we could measure our amplitude, if that's a word. We can see by, Google search results, is as we do this, more people coming to the site and comparing that to our competitors. But, you just can kind of tell. You can kind of tell.
Sarah, do you take a particular approach to trying to assess the return you're getting when you set up influencers for clients?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we first of all work with the clients. They have to identify with us, what is the goal? Are you looking for brand awareness? Are you looking for people coming through and purchasing a product? Are you looking for people to engage with these posts? We create kind of a measure of success that we're constantly working towards. So, I mean, I could talk an hour about the different tools out there that are available to even the smallest businesses, and just tips and tricks about how do you find the right influencer, because they may have a beautiful, beautiful page, but if they're only getting like 25 likes and they have 50,000 followers, there's a discrepancy there. And that's there's a lot of red flags out there in terms of influencers that are not going to be worth your time. There's also best practices. I think we talked a little bit about this last week about what are the things that you want your influencers to include in their posts that are going to be the most beneficial to you. You mentioned affiliate links, which is fantastic, but is there a call to action on every post that they have? What do you want people to do when they see that post? And that's usually the first question we ask people. What do you want to happen when we engage in influencer relations for you?
Paul, I didn't mean to skip over you. Do you have any kind of update over how your new marketing plan is going?
It's going. We reviewed a bunch of interviews that my consultants did with the target audience, and they had lined up 8 different firms and talked to people there about our product and how they go about buying it without identifying us as the interested party, just like how do you go about buying tables. And it was well worth doing. Like if I just stopped right here and I've paid whatever, 20 grand. There were some surprises in there.
Can you give us a hint? What kind of surprises? What did you learn?
One of the things that we learned is that some of the skills and approaches we developed in order to deal with a general public buying audience are not as valued by a more professional, like we're trying to target architects and interior designers. And a lot of our methods right now are based on just showing people, here's what something's going to look like. And the architects and interior designers just don't care about that much. That's not their main priority. They need information presented in a different format. And we never really thought about how some of the things we do just are irrelevant to one group of possible buyers as opposed to what we've been doing.
Could you explain that, Paul? It seems counterintuitive. I would have expected designers and architects to be very concerned about what the product would ultimately look like.
They are and they aren't. They have a different way of thinking about what the relationship between what something looks like and what its value is than our other clients. Let me put it this way. And it is counterintuitive because what architects and designers tend to do is choose a company based on an image of something they've designed and and I'm going to use some prejudicial language here, sort of the most facile level of analysis. Like, oh, I like this table because I like the way the base looks. And then they go down the road of working with that company. And then there's a lot that happens after that initial choice. But that initial choice is very important. Whereas our other clients, they don't know what they need. And a lot of times people say to us, like, we don't know what we want. We got an empty room. We need to sit people. But we'll know it when we see it. And then we make a huge effort to put something in a very easy to understand image in front of them. And then also to explain what it is they're looking at. Because when you shop for furniture, it's really easy to look at a photo and kind of focus on the wrong thing. And the way furniture choices are presented in 2D is often a photograph of something that isn't really the most important part of experiencing it. Like, the easiest way to explain this, in a chair can look really cool, and then when you sit in it, it's torture. But people will still buy things because they look really cool. And the professional trade is more biased towards we'll buy it because it looks really cool. And the person on the street who's paying big bucks with their own money wants to make sure the chair is comfortable. So you end up with this divergence in what the product could be. That was something that was reemphasized for me by this report we got from our consultants. So that's been good. And now we're going to be crafting messaging and figuring out how to approach this audience using the information we've gathered. So everything's working according to plan to me. As a matter of fact, we've already gotten a big win out of this because one of the people that the consultants approached the interview said, wow, we've never had anybody from a furniture company ask us why we chose blah, 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 blah. We want to meet these guys. So we've been introduced to a firm in Texas, a big firm that could potentially be a very, very valuable client. And that in itself may be as good as I need from this whole campaign.
That's amazing because you've told us that you don't need a lot of connections here. You're looking, if you get 5 or 6 clients out of this, you'd be thrilled.
Yeah. We already have that introduction that we wanted just by asking questions. Apparently that's very unusual in our industry.
All right. We're almost out of time. Last question I want to ask each of you. We're in this unusual time right now where we still have kind of a labor shortage. Still a little bit of the great resignation thing going, but we're also hearing lots of reports about the possible recession. And I'm wondering how that's affecting your employees. Are you still getting a lot of requests for raises, for example? And given the uncertainty of the time, I'm curious if you are, how you're dealing with those questions. Has anybody been knocking on any of your doors lately asking for more?
I've had a couple, but not in any way the majority. I would say I've had 3 out of 26 who asked for a raise, and one of them was somebody who wanted a raise for years and kind of cornered me finally.
Did that employee get the raise?
Yeah, she got a raise. I mean, she hadn't gotten a raise in 4 years, so for reasons, but she wanted a raise, gave her a raise. And then I had another employee who was recruited for another job, and I had to give him a raise to keep him. And a year ago, I had another employee in the same situation. But I would say, in general, no. I'm not getting a million people pounding on my door.
Anybody else?
We only do raises at the end of the year.
And you've been able to stick with that through the great resignation period. That's worked for you.
Yeah, because we actually pay better than most agencies. And all of our employees get a cut of the business at the end of the year. We do bonus, and we bonus much better than any other agency that I've ever worked at or known about. So, no, we pay them above market, and they will be rewarded at the end of the year if we are successful as a business. So I have actually never been asked for a raise.
Wow.
For most of my people, they're young enough where title is more important than money. Because I don't have anybody on my team that's full-time that is married with kids. We have some contractors that I will up their rate proactively, but I'm actually pretty good about that, where I can see somebody is doing their job beyond what they're supposed to be doing, and I will recognize that. I think that's actually one of the things I'm really good at is making sure that people are being paid for their work appropriately, and probably it's because I struggled with that when I worked for other people. I would be asked to do things that were outside of my job responsibilities, but it was never rewarded. At least from my perspective, it never was. So I make sure that happens for my team.
How does your bonus system work? Are you divvying up a percentage of profits, or what is it?
Yeah, I have a mathematical equation. It took me forever to figure it out. And I could talk a little bit about more. I'd have to have it in front of me because it's really like one of those things that you work really hard on for a couple months and then you forget about until it becomes bonus time again. But it's based on performance. It's based on company, what we have left at the end of the year. And it's based on their level in the company. And I put together a nifty little spreadsheet that lets me drop in that information after we've gone through the review process. And then I can always tweak it if I don't agree with the final numbers, but it's been pretty good.
Laura, how about you? Are you getting asked for raises?
No more than usual. Nothing pandemic related, but I think like Sarah, we've worked really hard to be proactive when somebody takes on more, talking with them when they're taking on more and saying, okay, let's give this 90 days. In 90 days, let's review your compensation, see if, these additional responsibilities have stuck, and if it's something you want to continue doing. No, I don't, we really haven't.
The proactive point is interesting. It sounds like you don't think it's necessary to wait until somebody asks for a raise.
No, I don't ever want somebody to ask for a raise. I feel like, unless there are extenuating circumstances and, sometimes, and this might be what Paul was alluding to, but the times usually that somebody is asking for a raise, it's because they actually don't deserve it.
Why do you say that?
Because some people, they usually aren't good culture fits. They're usually people who feel like they're contributing significantly more than they're actually contributing. And so yes, we have had one or two people and they don't work here anymore because what they view their contributions is significantly different than how the rest of us view their contributions. So they're typically not a good culture fit or a good performance fit. But for people who work their butts off...
So do you kind of view it as a red flag if somebody comes to you and asks for a raise?
No, because we've already known that there are so many other red flags that we're not surprised. And it's not usually people, they usually don't even come and officially ask for a raise. They passive aggressively say stuff like, oh my gosh, I worked 8 hours and 15 minutes yesterday. Did you realize that? And we're like, yeah, we also saw you on your phone for 4 of those hours. So maybe that's why, blah, blah, blah. So there's so many other red flags. It's not them asking for a raise.
Right.
That's just a symptom, of a bigger issue. I would be devastated if one of our really good employees came to us and asked for a raise, because it means I didn't do a good job, and I wasn't proactive enough and recognized, their value.
I agree with you on all of what you said. I think that's great. I don't necessarily think it's a red flag, but for me, in my perspective, contractors, when I hire a contractor, I say, okay, what's your rate? And that is on them to tell me how much they think their work is worth, right? And then for me to negotiate what's going to work for us. But it's not my job to proactively give a contractor a raise. I feel like they have to come to me for that.
Paul, how about you? Do you wait for somebody to come and ask?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, I don't think there's a correlation between a good and bad employee and asking for a raise. At least that hasn't been my experience. So there may be issues where I hire someone at a wage that today is required to get them in the door, and then you look at the total compensation for everybody, and there might be someone you hired 10 years ago who is more experienced and just needs to be brought up to something so that there's not a disparity. And in those cases, I'll retroactively or just go in and say, hey, you're doing a great job, and I want to make sure that you're being compensated fairly. Boom, here you go. And then I've had people ask, and I've had every possible scenario. It's just on a case-by-case basis with me. And I try to, at the end of the day, understand how much people are getting compensated in total. A lot of these discussions for me play out in terms of whether we're providing health insurance or not, because that's expensive. And so that's a form of compensation, and I may volunteer to take a little more of the load or a little less of the load depending on the rest of the circumstances. But I don't have any blanket rules about it.
All right. My thanks to Paul Downs, Sarah Segal, and Laura Zander. As always, thanks for sharing, guys. Wait. Don't leave yet. If you have a question or a comment that you'd like the 21 Hats owners to address, send it to me by replying to your morning report or by email at lauren@21hats.com. That's LOREN@21hats.com. Do it now before you forget. And don't be afraid to tell Jay what you really think. He can take it. And if you got something out of this conversation, help us reach more business owners. Tell a friend. Subscribe and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to the Morning Report at 21hats.com. This episode was produced by Jess Thuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Okay, now you can leave. Thanks for listening, everyone.